Hey, so today's little 10-minute talk is about why did I write Dragonscales? This was the third of the core books of the Apophis curriculum. It followed Apophis itself, which set out the initiatory model of the sevenfold steps of the seven heads of the mythical serpent. Um, and it followed Igesjalm, which was the book of dragon runes, because the main Apophis work was deliberately systemless. And the idea was that these principles could be taken and fleshed out with the body of any tradition, any mythology that anybody coming to it wanted to use. And then I guess Yalm was using my own, I guess, preferred tradition, that of the runes and Norse mythology, to really put some meat on the bones of that system to show how it would be done. And that, of course, became an absolute masterwork in its own right. Quite literally, Igesjalm is my masterwork in the Rune Guild, as a result of which I was named a Rune Master. So, what was Dragonscales? Dragonscales consists of a series of articles, essays, speculations, and so on, some of which have been written previously in the little newsletters, which had been published long before the book Apophis, in which the system had been worked out, and some of which were based on things which have been developed since. But basically, when I wrote Apophis and when I wrote Igesjalm, the idea was that this was all compressed into the base curriculum. And I took out a lot of material around the edges just to focus on those base things. But those things that were taken out were still important. So Dragonscales is an expansion to those first two volumes. It contains material which will really set you thinking and will broaden your view of the work. So let's have a little look at what's in here. It's a really important volume which expands in so many major ways and also sets the tone for a lot which was to come, and some of which hasn't even been developed properly in print yet, because believe me, the majority of the Apophis work that has been done and all of the latest breakthroughs have not seen print. Some of it never will. Some of it will have to be taught in courses because I simply won't be able to get it written down in time. There's so much. But Dragonscales contains the roots for so much of that. It has expansion material on all seven heads. Some of it's significant, particularly for the heads after the fourth, which are more not scantily treated, but less fleshed out in Apophis. You find a lot more clues here in the ways in which these can be approached, because the work of those heads is much more personal and much more dependent upon you yourself, who you are, and what you're to do. But you still need some guidelines to spin off in those directions. There's also extra runic material, and the first hints, guidelines on utilizing this material in a Celtic context. For example, we have a couple of articles by Steve Davies, such as Alchemy and the Cauldron of Inspiration. We have the first article on Enochian draconian magic, which later grew into that huge volume, The Sevenfold Mystery. We have things such as, again, touching on Celtic mysteries, the first analysis that went into print of the story of Vortigern's Tower and its symbolism, and the boyhood of Merlin, that Merlinic strand, which is something which is going to be explored in future publications if I get round to them. We have, again, Celtic themes. The first printed analysis in the Apophis work of that all-important, and I mean quite literally all-important, old Irish charm, which was used so wonderfully in John Bowman's movie Excalibur as Merlin's dragon chant. The charm of making, which is one of the most profound charms knowable for so many reasons. There is so much power in those few words. And it has its first breakdown in here. This was explored a bit more in a later small book in the Draconian Grimoires series, but this is where we first treated of it. It still hasn't had its full expansion and explanation of its extreme importance, but it's a hugely powerful charm. We have more material on the void. There's a kind of guided meditation to prepare people for the experience of the opening of the eye. And that can be really important too, because it's something that we've developed so much more in the last few years. But the process in Apophis is very much giving you a trajectory, and the actual hitting of it and the experiential reality of it is something which kind of comes about almost by the momentum rather than a particular technique. And that's always going to be the nature of that experience, though we have now developed means, which will be shared in courses next year, of accelerating that momentum and getting the trajectory absolutely right, so that the experience is pretty much a certainty and will be experienced in the correct way. In other words, it will be empowering rather than devastating, because it does have that possibility. So many other things here, so many other mythic themes, such as the werewolf, the journey of Inanna into the underworld and its symbolic significance, the Gorgon. This book is absolutely packed with supplemental essays which broaden the perspective so much, and give so much preparatory material for all that's to come. The Apophis curriculum is an enormous and ever-growing thing. As I say, there's so much of it which is not even in print yet. I will be sharing the ways in which you can have access to that easily in the coming weeks and months. 2024 is going to see a huge leap in courses with particular regard to some of these more recent and more advanced materials. There are also going to be supplemental volumes released, which will be focusing upon particular heads, especially those from the 4th onwards. In other words, the ones which people tend to find more difficult, and which are much more personalized. So it's taken a great deal of work in developing ways which can be used by individuals doing individual work to really enhance that. We haven't been sitting idle. But the core of all of these things, and the core of seeing how this expands, the core really of getting to grips, not just with the curriculum, but with the scope of it, with tickling the imagination in the ways that it needs to expand in order to encompass these things, is right here in Dragonscales. That's why it was written. The first two books were laying down the basic formula. Here we see it expanding. Here we begin to see its possibilities. Here we see the ways in which you can use it in the way that you want to use it. So it was a colossally important book. If you are using the Apophis curriculum, if you've experienced how useful it is in it's really focused and helpful build up towards initiation, then this book will be of tremendous value. And if you got it in the early days, because it's one of these things, and I do this as everybody does. You get a book, you read it, the words go in, intellectually you understand them, but you're not in a place where they spark that fire because you're not ready for it yet. There are seeds in this book which are truly profound. So if you have it and you just sort of treat it in the past, oh, these are just supplementary essays, they're not the main thing. Give it another look and you may find yourself surprised, because it was written for a very specific reason. Some of those reasons are only now coming into development. The quantity of work to really expand and develop something like this is extraordinary. And in spite of the huge amount of books I've written, it's still not enough. So read what's there. Every word has been written for a reason. Every word is directing towards what's to come. And you would not believe what we are producing now. Some of you will be able to get access to it just in the new year. But in the meantime, this book, written over a decade ago, contains the roots of all of these things. And if you can instill those seeds in yourself now, you will be ready for some extraordinary experiences to come. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you again real soon. Bye for now.